Hi everyone, my name is Callista Walla, and my project is called Control Plus Recycle, making digital zero waste resources accessible. I'm a student in the program on the environment at UW, and I did this work with Repurpose Whitby, a zero waste nonprofit on Whitby Island. My site supervisor was Joan Green, and my faculty advisor was Professor Jennifer Mykoff from the Allen School. So with my project, what I'm looking at is this. So people want to do the right thing with their waste, but the digital tools that we often give them are confusing, inaccessible, or just not really make with their community in mind. So my project asks, how do we design online recycling resources so that people can actually find them, understand them, and trust them enough to use them? So to give a little bit of context, in the US, only about 5 to 6% of plastic waste gets recycled, and a lot of that comes down to everyday confusion. So people might ask, can I recycle this takeout container? Or where does this specific item go? And most of us, when we're unsure, go straight to the internet. So the quality of digital information is extremely important. At the same time, we have what's called the digital divide. On Whidbey Island, where my internship took place, internet access can be a little slower and less reliable, and not everyone is comfortable with using online tools. So, if an online recycling guide is hard to read, slow to load, or written in very technical language, it doesn't just feel annoying, but it also means that whole groups of people may be excluded from participating in this good environmental behavior. So, that's kind of the starting point of my project. If people rely on digital tools to understand recycling, then those tools need to be accessible, grounded in local community values, and also clear about policy instead of just buried in jargon. So from there, I frame my work around two big questions. So first, how can we increase accessibility, equity, and trust in publicly available digital resources? And second, how can policy and zero waste measures be translated into simple, actionable guidances that can be used by all users, regardless of their background or comfort with technology? And to answer these questions, I used a mix of internship work, field visits, and also some qualitative research. So over the summer, I interned at Repurpose Whitby. The organization runs repair workshops, drop-off events, and also zero waste initiatives on the grounds. And my main responsibility was to help develop the Wasteless Wiki. The Wasteless Wiki is a digital recycling guide that will be specific to Whidbey Islanders and intended to be accessible to residents of all ages. On the design side, I work with a graphic designer to sketch and then build Figma layouts for the site, which included, for example, a homepage, some simple navigation, and also individual material pages that showed both reuse options and also recycling steps for different materials. So the intention was for someone with a random item with their hand, so let's say a styrofoam tray, to be able to just type it in and immediately see what is this item, what can I do with this item, and also why it matters to recycle them. And also behind the scenes, I also built some materials database. So I processed old spreadsheets and notes from past interns and then turned them into a structured Excel file and later also an Airtable prototype. Each material entry had things like material type, where it could be dropped off, how to prepare it, and also some extra notes about the sustainability of the item. And because the website wasn't fully coded yet, I also created an interim Airtable-based mini wiki that we could use in the meantime. We needed this to demonstrate our project to our mentor from Zero Waste Washington. So the idea was that even while the real site was still under development, we still had like a functional, searchable version of the information ready to be used. And alongside this digital work, I also designed a little bit of physical signage based on these online layouts. So like posters slash infographics that could be put up at the drop-off sites to visually explain how sustainable different materials are, how to prepare them before recycling, so that the same content would be both in the online and physical spaces. And at the same time, my independent research was digging into some web accessibility standards, especially the Web Content Accessibility Guidance Guidelines, or WCAG, which is a global framework that makes web content usable for people of different disabilities. And with support from Professor Mankoff, I built a custom WCAG-based checklist for the Wasteless Wiki. Instead of just like taking what we already have on the internet, we adapted it so that Repurpose could use it in phases. Starting with level A items that are the most essential and realistic for a small organization to implement, and then working up to double A and then triple A as capacity allows. For each requirement, I added some comments on how the current prototype measured up and also what specific changes might look like in practice in the future. And I also visited Whidbey Island several times, had informal conversations with residents and shopkeepers, and paid attention to how people talk about their community. Themes like self-reliance, creativity, and environmental stewardship came up over and over again, which aligned with Repurpose's motto, there's no such thing as trash, and how they always try to reuse materials as much as possible. And these experiences help connect the design and data work with real people and values that we wanted to serve. So out of all this, three big findings emerged. The first one is accessibility. When we think about accessibility, sometimes we treat it as a niche or a bonus feature, but I found that it actually improves usability for everyone. Things like good color contrast, alternative text for images, clear headings, it helps everyone using screen readers, people who have small phones and are using them in bright light, people who are just tired and overwhelmed or easily fatigued. But unfortunately, accessibility problems are everywhere. The Web 8IM Million study shows that the vast majority of websites fail basic WCAG standards and have dozens of errors on a single homepage. In fact, 94.8%. Those errors cut people out of the experience of using these websites entirely. So, for example, someone using a screen reader wouldn't be able to access information on images um, without alternative text. People who have certain types of color blindness may not be able to access information on websites if the colors are too similar to each other. Um, and that's not just a technical issue, but it does directly affect whether people can actually participate in these zero waste initiatives. And I also found that design quality and accessibility are closely tied to trust. People judge whether a site is credible very quickly based on how it looks and how easy it is to use it. If a recycling tool feels confusing, cluttered, or not very easy to use, they're less likely to trust the information on it or even to return to this resource. My second finding was about community values. From reading the literature and talking with residents, it was very clear that digital tools are more effective when they feel like they're from the community instead of dropped onto it from the outside. Co-creation plays a big part of this too. So when residents are invited to give feedback or suggest categories or contribute some examples, they shift from just being the users but also to being partners. This kind of involvement builds legitimacy and also a sense of ownership. People are more likely to continue using a resource that they help shape, or at least recognize as reflective of their own lives. And my third finding is policy translation. Many zero waste rules and recycling requirements come from policy. And in the real world, not a lot of people are going to be reading policy documents to fully understand the newest, the most updated policies that are in effect. So there's a big gap between what the policy is and also what residents may understand. So research shows that mandatory recycling laws actually work best when they are paired with clear educational guidance, which means simple, actionable steps that make compliance extremely easy, and also help increase policy literacy. So these are my three big takeaways, which are kind of like a summary of what I just talked about earlier. So to put everything together in the grand scheme of things, the big message of my project is that digital design is really important, and in today's time and age, digital design is environmental communication. So if we want people to participate in zero waste, the way we design online tools matters almost just as much as policy or infrastructure that are made. Tools like the Oasis Wiki have to be accessible, culturally grounded, and also clear in terms of policy to actually make an impact. Face accessibility improvements will also help make this realistic for small organizations. Community-centered design builds trust, and strong policy translation helps connect everyday actions to the bigger environmental picture. Thank you so much for listening to my presentation. I would like to thank my site supervisor, Joan Green, for her invaluable guidance and support, and my faculty advisor, Professor Jennifer Mankoff, for her invaluable insight for this project. I'm also very grateful to the talented and knowledgeable Repurpose Wiki team for the opportunity to work on the Wasteless Wiki. So Derek, Sajin, and John, thank you guys. And ultimately, I'm extremely grateful to Pishan for his guidance throughout this capstone journey. And most importantly, thank you to my mom, my dad, and my brother for their constant encouragement and support throughout my education.